Well, happy noontime to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is Dr. Monica Powell. I'm the Senior Associate Dean and Graduate Dean here. Thank you for coming to chat with the Grad Dean. I'm glad that you could make time to join us. We've got some expected visitors and some unexpected visitors to the chat today. So as always, I want to welcome David Widdifield. He's our Assistant Dean for Master's Programs. David, you want to say hello to everybody?
Yeah, hey everybody. Hope you're excited as we all are about starting the new semester, and whether you're taking courses either remotely or in class or both. I know we're all excited to be back on campus or back in the classroom.
You're absolutely right about that, David. Thank you so much for those welcome words. You know, we've turned a corner. We are now in 2021, and everything about 2020 is in the past. So let's forget about all that and let's get excited about what lies ahead. You know, here in the Jindal School, being in a new semester, there's always an abundant amount of energy that comes with a new semester, especially after the year that we've had. I think that there was something psychologically powerful about changing the year from 2020 to 2021, in the sense that we can now really start to believe and know that we can see the end is out there with regard to vaccines, and we're going to be able to come back and be together in some kind of form, hopefully by fall. Where we can all be in classes together. We can have all the rowdy noise in the hallways and the students stealing chairs and kicking people out of study rooms, and student organizations that are lost and signage everywhere. You know, I love the chaos of the academic environment, and that's one thing that I know that David has missed in students being in a remote capacity. And how weird is it to teach a class where some of the people are in the room, some of the people are online, and some of the people catch you later. It's a very weird way to deliver coursework, but I think we've had an amazingly successful last 10 months, shockingly so. I think that a lot of great things have been proven. Deliver high quality graduate education when all the stops are out and you have to change everything about how you do it. I think that we've demonstrated that we can have top-notch co-curricular engagement with our students. Our student organizations were massively active in the fall. I dropped into many of those meetings that were taking place on Saturday and Sunday to find 70 and 80 students on those events and participating with those employers. And then, of course, our career management center was in full bloom. You would have never known that they weren't in the building because they had employer engagement that was going on nonstop, kind of the whole semester. So this is an exciting time. The fact that we conquered what 2020 gave us, and it's going to make us better in the future, and we can look forward to maybe doing things more the traditional way in the fall. I will just remind everybody that these same course modalities that we've had in fall 2020 and spring 2021 will prevail for summer 2021. So everything will be the way that you've known it to be in the last several semesters. Our hope and expectation is that come fall, we will be back here on campus fighting for parking spaces. Now, I expect that much of the great silver linings that we've seen in course instruction will move forward into the fall. I think faculty will start using some of these fancy smancy technologies that they've been using, and our courses will continue to have some of those components. They'll be more face-to-face. If I were guessing and betting, although this bet doesn't work when I play the lottery, but if I were betting and guessing, we'll be back in the fall in a more traditional way for sure. I'm sure we'll have masks on until the nation and the world reach immunity levels of herd immunity. I think we're going to be in masks, and boy, do I hate masks, but we do it. I went into a meeting a minute ago with our vice dean, and I had my mask hanging here on my ear, and he was like, "That's one wacky looking earring you got there, Monica." So I know all of us are going to be tired of washing them, finding them. They're stuffed into every pocket I have, purse I have. They hang on carabiners inside of my car. It's just like, it seems like there's a mask explosion, but we'll probably have masks in the fall until folks are en masse inoculated, and we're absolutely looking forward to that. So let me give a couple of quick updates real quick before we launch into our featured unexpected guests that we have with us today, just to remind students of some important things. Now, I want all of you to remember the academic calendar. We tell students about this all the time. Norma's probably going to pop it up on the screen because she's so good at that. But please be mindful of the deadlines on the academic calendar. On the screen, you'll see the calendar. If you scroll down, there's a place where you get to view the whole calendar. And what students often don't realize is they think there's only one page. There's 2 pages to this thing, and you want to be mindful of what's on both. But Norma is highlighted that January 26th add drop deadline that will come. The other things you want to be mindful of are things like applying for graduation, and look at emails that you'll receive about applying for graduation. And she's highlighting that as well for people that would be graduating this semester. Please pay attention to the refund schedule because the university doesn't negotiate this. And so if you can see that you're already not getting back 100% of the tuition. So please be mindful of that and don't let that be a surprise. The other item that I might throw out to all of you is, as you're navigating your careers and your degrees, take advantage of all the resources that you have here to help answer questions that you have. So we have something now called the JSOM question desk. It's a great resource if you need a quick question or answer to something. And Norma is just so quick on the draw. She's showing it to you on the screen. You can do live chat on the question desk, or you can email the question desk by emailing jsomquestions@utdallas.edu. We have people that are working the question desk from 8 in the morning till 5:30 every evening, and it's terrific. They can try to find instant answers to questions. Now, don't expect to give them your life story and have them tell you what course you're missing in your degree plan. That's something that you need to be looking at your degree audits and e-learning on. But they can answer a lot of quick questions and help students to get resolution quicker. If you do have questions about your degrees, I strongly encourage you to connect with your programs. Reach out to your program director, reach out to your academic support coordinator. Those are the kind of individuals who can answer questions between what's the difference between this class and that class. I want to go do X in my degree plan. What kind of courses would employers be looking at? I'm looking at this job description. What do you think that this means in this job description, and how can I better prepare to be qualified? Those are great questions that you can ask your degree program folks. They are suited to answer those questions, and they can do it quickly. Those are not the types of questions you ask the advising operation, because they are really focused on the tactical registration, drop ad, have you got all the courses you need to graduate type of questions. Are you fulfilling prerequisites? They really are not career advisors. From a curricular perspective, your program can help you. From the career side, we have the most fabulous career management center here in the Jindal School. We are really fortunate to have a team of 11 folks that are dedicated to helping students. They did a marvelous job last spring, last summer, last fall, in making everything you can imagine happen virtually for our students. And so today, we are really just delighted to have Fiona Hunter with us. She's Associate Director of the JSOM Career Management Center. And while we've given you advice about this is where you go solve your course registration problems, and this is where you go answer your degree-related questions, the career-related questions can be addressed in the Career Center in concert with your degree program. You know, if you're in supply chain, you can talk to David Widdifield, who's the program director, and he can give you some great advice. But if you want to go and get into an internship or go to a panel with a bunch of supply chain employers, the Career Management Center is your place. So I'd like to welcome Fiona to the screen and ask Fiona some questions. So you're going to see Fiona, and you're not going to see me, and I'm going to ask Fiona a series of questions and have her kind of enlighten us about what the world of career management looks like right now. Welcome to Chat with the Grad Dean, Fiona.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on.
Well, Happy New Year to you. So Fiona, I think in the fall we had 150 employer events where students had an opportunity to engage in a virtual way with employers. What does it look like for spring 2021?
It looks very similar. Our employers are just really excited about the summer. They're They're trying to work out whether or not students will have internships in person or on site, or whether it's going to be virtual. And a lot of them are working on planning for one or the other, so that they could easily move between it if they need to. And because of that, there's still a lot of very active hiring going on. A lot of this starts in the fall. That's really our busiest time.
Mhm.
And we saw our employers really embracing the virtual world. So instead of having to take the time, drive onto campus, come on for an hour, go back to the office, they were coming on for panels, they were coming on and sharing their ideas. They were doing ones which were just for UT Dallas, and then they were also offering their own that were really open for all universities. And I know, Monica, you said earlier about how employers are really enjoying that there's so much more reach into schools where they haven't recruited before. And, that's one of the conversations that we've been having year after year with some of the employers that maybe are based up in New York and can't travel to the Dallas area just for a 1 hour meeting, so,
Mhm.
and it's opened opportunities. It really has. And so the spring is looking very similar. Um, Whereas the fall tends to be some of the larger companies with their large programs really kicking those off. They are still hiring for those. They may not be coming onto campus or virtually coming onto campus to meet with you, but a lot of those companies are still hiring right through the end of February for internships this summer. And then you have other companies that are really just starting their internship searches because they don't plan in the same way. They have some different approaches to their recruiting. So, there's a lot of activity still going on, and there always is right up to the last minute before the summer starts.
Fiona, I'm delighted to hear that. And I tend to um, I tend to believe that there's always innovation in human resource and college and undergraduate student recruiting. And I'm of the belief that many of these top companies who would widely promote the 20 schools that they would recruit from, and those schools had a premium on those companies. I happen to believe that some of that's going to go away, because I think that there is going to be such a push socially for diversity and inclusion that those companies are going to realize that they're going to get a wider array of perspectives if they expand into those other markets permanently. Do you think that that's going to happen, or is Monica just on some kind of wild fantasy?
I think you're absolutely on point. We've heard so much over this last year about diversity and inclusion. It's been a conversation in organizations for probably about the last 15 years, but suddenly this year it has become almost the primary focus whenever employers are are looking at who are they hiring, how do they engage them, and how do they develop them. And that real belief that when you've got a really diverse group of people with different backgrounds, different thoughts, different ideas, that your team is going to be so much more successful. That's really what's driving a lot of the thoughts for diversity.
Mhm.
And um, and with that becomes inclusion. And I love that the conversation is about inclusion. It's about valuing everyone, about welcoming everyone, and we're seeing so much more emphasis on that. So the days of it being numbers driven as to what backgrounds you are is less. and it's much more about really valuing everyone for what they bring to the group, to the team, to the division that you're going to be working in.
Yeah, I think that's really good news. I think 2020 was a difficult year on so many fronts, but I think the sunrise on 2021 is going to bring a greater openness. And I think that everybody wins with that attitude and that mindset. You know, I think for our students who get very confused or overwhelmed by the internship approval process, can you just break that down for them? Because it really isn't overwhelming, but they seem to, one, be impatient with it, and two, a little bit confused by it. So can you talk about what a student does when they've located an internship and they have an offer letter? What do they do? Where do they go?
So the first thing is, if you're an international student, you absolutely need to know when you will be eligible for CPT, and you must take the workshop. And if you're unclear, talk to ISSO, because there's nothing worse than accepting an offer for a position in a semester when you are not going to be authorized for that. So just absolutely make sure that you know when you will be eligible. Don't make assumptions based on friends. Make sure you understand for your program when you'll be eligible. And for our domestic students, I mean, you can start at any time. So some of what I'm saying doesn't necessarily apply to our domestic students, but you accept the offer and it looks absolutely great. But just make sure that when you make the decision to accept the offer, you're making a commitment to that employer, and we want you to follow through on that. So it's, you know, there's nothing worse than hearing, oh, I got a much better offer. It came in a week later. I knew I was interviewing. I just didn't wait for it. You know, you have to really shut down the rest of your interviewing for that same period. You can continue conversations, obviously, for the next semester, which is a great thing to do. You want to keep those relationships going. But once you've accepted your offer, you've made the commitment to that employer.
You know,
You,
Fiona, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that has dire consequences. And you don't think that it will have an impact, but it does. So I'm going to tell a story. I'm a bit of a storyteller. A few years ago, we had a student who had been looking for a summer internship, and very early on had accepted an internship with a company in the month of February. And she was so excited, so excited. And it was a great company, great opportunity to apply her degree. So she accepted the offer. This was at a time when we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, and she went and met with the new employer, met the whole team. She linked up with them on LinkedIn. She, you know, was doing nothing but extolling her excitement about joining the company. She did not, however, stop interviewing, and she continued to interview, and suddenly got a better job offer. It paid her slightly more money than the original offer. So she had accepted the offer in February, and now it's April. So she decides to tell the first employer that she's gotten a TA-ship, a teaching assistantship for the summer, and backs out on the offer while accepting another offer with another company. The mistake that this young girl made is that she then put that new offer acceptance out on LinkedIn, where the first employers quickly realized that she had not told them the truth about why she wasn't going to follow through, and that she was really going to another employer. Well, the first employer was very upset, which you can understand why. They had, you know, put all their eggs into the basket of hiring this particular student. They were embarrassed that she had lied. It for a while it hurt, because they didn't want to come and interview other students. So it hurt our relationship with them. It was a lack of professionalism by the student. And then what was even worse is the new employer found out about it as well. So, you know, then you've got a young student who is may use some bad judgment, and it ended up hurting everybody. And of course, the student never even thought about the implications of it. They thought, this is a big deal if I make $3 more an hour over a summer, that's a big chunk of money. I was thinking more about my bottom line and not thinking about the reputation of the school. So Fiona is dead on right. If you accept an offer, you notify anybody else that you're interviewing with that you are so excited about discussing a future opportunity, glad to continue the conversation, but you have accepted an offer. Do not play the game of juggling one against the other, because if you renege on a job offer that you've accepted, or if you accept a job offer when you haven't gotten, clarity about if you can do an internship, those can backfire on you and your classmates and colleagues. And so you don't want to do that. So Fiona, thank you. Fiona, can you talk a little bit about the handshake process,
Sure.
the various approvals it goes through? Because students don't understand what goes on underneath the hood in the engine.
Yeah, so the first step is that the students will request approval for it through Handshake. And there's a certain place where you do it. It's called an experience. It's a little hidden on Handshake, so you have to know where to go. But all of the instructions are out on the Career Management Center website, and there are multiple other places as well. But you have to look for that, unfortunately, on Handshake. So you go in, request an experience, and you're going to answer questions, and you're going to upload some documents. So the documents are going to be your offer letter, your job description, and an unofficial transcript, because we need to know what your grades are, what your overall GPA is, are you eligible, what courses have you done, etc. So the easiest way is for you to upload the unofficial transcript. So once that's been done, the main career center, the University Career Center, does the first review. They're looking for completeness in the information. And if something is missing, you've missed some fields, or something doesn't align, they're going to get back to you and ask for more information. And they turn this around within 48 hours. They are looking at a high volume, obviously, of requests. So they're probably going to look at it once and come back maybe the next morning, or maybe later in the afternoon, and take another look. So they're not going to be on it immediately and turning this around. So try and get it in with all of the details the first time. It really moves the process along much faster. They then send the request to the program director. So that's for your program, because you're eligible to do an internship in your program. The only exception for that are the MBA students. MBA students will select the program most directly related to the type of work that they're doing. So if you're an MBA student and you're doing supply chain work, you'll be selecting supply chain management. If you're looking at finance analyst, then you're going to be probably looking at the finance program, or maybe business analytics. So whichever it is that fits the best, that's what you're selecting, and it's that program director who's going to be reviewing it. So if you're an MBA, stay in touch with Michelle Swanson, let her know what's going on, because she's going to be in the loop as well, although not an approver. So the program director is going to review it. They're going to make sure that you are eligible for the internship academically. So they're going to look at your GPA. You have to be in good standing. You have to have completed a certain number of courses. They're doing some checks. And at the moment, when we have a lot of students who are being asked by their employer to work remotely due to COVID, there's an additional approver which is required. So that will actually come to the Career Management Center for Tom Kim or myself's review. That is because remote working is not in our policy. If these were normal times, we would want you to be working on site, really engaged in the team. And remote working is not ideal for getting that connection, although companies are doing so much better with this and getting so much more used to it. But it is an exception. So the program director will ultimately approve, and from there you will get an email and you will be asked to register for the internship course. You will decide how many credit hours you are going to be requesting, and you'll send that to graduate advising, and graduate advising will enroll you. Now we're asking you to think very carefully about the number of credit hours, because they do not change this after you are enrolled. You're making a decision. For our domestic students, that's the end of the process. You're probably already working or ready to start working. You're signed up in the course, and you'll just work with your course instructor on what the deliverables will be. For our international students, our F1 students, you also need CPT approval. You cannot work until you have that. So once you're enrolled in the course, a request will go to ISSO for your CPT approval. ISSO will review and will then issue the I-20 form for you. Some students are also looking for their social security number. They haven't worked here before. For that, there is information out on ISSO's website. But again, you have to have your I-20 for working before you can even apply for your social security number. So that comes at the end of the process as well.
Wow, that was really awesome, Fiona. I don't think we've ever gotten that on video before, which is great. We may have to edit that out, and you can put it on the career management website to say, want to understand how it works? Here's Fiona telling you. I think the one thing that I'll just throw in is that if you are an international student, you cannot work 1 second before you have that I-20 approval. And then the other factor is you cannot work 1 second beyond the offer letter end date. So if you can work, I mean, if your offer letter is through May the 8th at 5 p.m., do not work on May the 9th, because if you go 1 second over what is that offer letter, or start the internship before you have the authorized I-20 approval, that could mean that you're out of status, and you don't ever want to be out of status. So Fiona, thank you so much for that explanation. That was really, really clear and really concise. I think for our students, the one thing that I would add is that, you know, an internship, getting an internship is, and a final placement job, is not just sitting at home in your comfy PJ pants at 3 a.m. and applying for these positions. In today's world, especially now with everything being in this crazy virtual space, employers are expecting people to have a couple of other things. And I've been preaching this since the beginning of COVID. But if you are not comfortable in this environment, if you are not comfortable looking straight at your crazy camera dot and talking to the person on the other side of that camera, and you aren't confident, you know, to use your gestures, to use vocal inflection, to use some humor, you have got to get used to this environment. I have talked to endless number of employers in the fall who had great candidates, literally awesome candidates, but that candidate could not be comfortable in this environment. The employer said I had to walk away from my top candidate because they were too self-conscious. And you just got to get over all that. Just look at the doggone dot on the camera and talk to it. Pretend it's a human with one eye, and just do it, because they want people that can exhibit confidence when they are in the workspace and can be able to have influence, be convincing, be just like you were if you're in a room. So your camera is your best friend, and you need to turn it on in class this semester. You need to engage in class and practice. I mean, the more you do this, the more it's just second nature. And it's just like you're talking to another human, a cyclops, but a human nonetheless. But I will tell you, it is really sad when an employer walks away from some really top candidates because they haven't embraced this virtual world, which is kind of nutty in some ways, because you guys are out there using social media like crazy, and you're doing selfies like crazy, and you're doing little TikTok videos like crazy. But for some reason, when you think about engaging in a spontaneous conversation, suddenly you shut down. I was talking to a student last week about an academic issue. The entire time, and I made the student turn on their camera, the entire time the student did this. Well, Dr. Powell, I don't really know. I'm not sure. You cannot be convincing that way. So you gotta, and of course I'm gonna push a student a little bit in that situation. And we dealt with the academic problem, but then I had the little conversation about you can't present yourself that way on the camera. People and folks, this kind of interviewing is here to stay. Going forward, all employers are going to do rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had a student who went through 9 rounds of interview on video last fall. Didn't even meet with them until the 10th time. They actually went to the place of employment and did the face-to-face mass kind of interview. And if employers can save a boatload of money not having to fly candidates across the country, this is the way it is. So to the extent that you can get used to it, you absolutely need to get used to it, because the ones that are comfortable in this environment are going to be the ones that get it. So number one, you have to be comfortable with the camera. Number two, you can't just apply and think you're going to get a job. You must do the other things. You need to be getting out on Gendal Connect and connecting with alums who might be working at that organization. You need to be out on LinkedIn, joining some discussion groups, engaging and trying to connect with people at those places of employment. Even though we're in this pandemic arena, networking still is a primary tool in getting you an interview and landing a job. So you need to still be doing all that other stuff. I was talking to a student before Christmas, and they were really upset. They had applied for over 300 jobs, internship jobs, and they had only gotten a handful of interviews. And when I explored why that was the case, they hadn't done one bit of networking. And when they turned that around after Christmas, I got an email from that student, and the student suddenly had 6 or 7 new interviews. So you got to do the whole thing. You can't just do part of it. So Fiona, have I forgot any of the other big tips?
No, I think the part about the video interviewing is so important. And we are teaching it in the MAS 6102, but that doesn't mean that you should stop practicing if you've completed that course. Interview Stream is available for you to practice, and you can respond to questions. You can get used to not having that live person looking at you and smiling at you and encouraging you. You're going to get that blank screen, right? And practice it and view some things. I mean, we've had students, just like Monica was saying, they're looking for the answer on the ceiling, or they get nervous and you see these nervous twitches. I had one student who just rocks. And I find it really hard to watch that, even though they were saying the most wonderful things. Their nervousness comes through in different ways. So you need to practice to eliminate those detractors that people are going to notice versus listening to what you're saying. The market is tough. The market is always tough at sometimes, but it's tough at the moment. And employers are looking for the students that stand out, that are going that extra step, that are really showing that they are interested in that company and that type of work. And so one of the things that I always stress, much more with some of our students that have work experience and they're maybe not going through the class, is it's great that you've got all of this experience. But if you've got experience that's in finance and you want to be in business analytics, just talking about finance all the time isn't going to get you hired. You've got to talk about business analytics and your passion for it and why that company and what that company is doing. And so it's not just a case of, great, I got the interview. It's you've got to do the research on the company. You've got to find out why they want to hire people. What type of roles are you going to be getting offered as an internship? Yes, it's a learning experience, but you've got to do a little bit of research and find out what they're looking for and make sure that you are telling them the things that they need to hear, not just what you want to tell them. So it's a little bit of diving down and research. And to be honest, the research on companies is a lot tougher this year than it's been in the past. You know, your traditional ways of looking at an annual report, the annual reports that were issued last year with ideas of where they would be this year have changed. So you want to look at quarterly reports. You want to look at what's in the news. You want to see not just what was happening maybe 6 months ago, but what's happening today with that company. And you've got companies that their world has changed. Their world has changed, and some companies, their focus is much more on compliance type of activities versus growth activities. And a year ago, and what some of our alumni may have been hired into was a growth environment. And today's world might be process improvement, which is focused on how can we do this more efficiently? How can we do this more effectively? How can we save money versus how can we get this new product to market? You know, so conversations have changed over this year. And so that would be the other thing I would recommend that students really think about is where is the company aiming to be for the summer? What are their priorities going to be? And where do you fit? Where do you fit into that team? How are you going to contribute? How are you going to be the best hire that they can make?
Yeah, Fiona, you nailed it. All of those were such great points, and that takes work. You know, when you're looking for an internship in a job, it's like taking an additional 3 or 6 credit hours. You got to give up something to put in the legwork. It isn't going to happen by happenstance. You're going to have to make it happen. And the hungry bird gets the worm.
The early bird.
The early bird gets the worm. Well, the early student gets the job. So get after it. I do think in one of these upcoming chat with the grad deans, I guess I'll give a little bit of time to pontificate about the number one most popular interview question that students mess up. So Norma, I think we ought to tease that for the next grad chat meeting, because as much as I've preached this to students, it seems like we would have reduced the failure to answer the question wrong. But I guess maybe we'll get out there and get after it again and talk a little bit about that all important tell me about yourself question that 8 out of 10 students mess up the answer, and you think you know the answer, but you don't. So we'll talk about that in a future grad chat. Fiona or David, do you guys have any other quick advice for students? Because I do want to give a little bit of time if we have any questions from our attendees today. So David, what's your one nugget of advice for students? And then Fiona, why don't you follow David, and then we'll see if there's some questions for today.
Okay, no, thank you, Dr. Powell. Yeah, I mean, Fiona covered quite a bit that she and I are dealing with on, I think, just about every day now and into the weekend. But I think one of the things that she mentioned about, you know, if you're in the finance course, and I'm going to take the example I had right before this meeting. I have a student who's in our business analytics course who wants to make a career as a business analyst in process improvement and design in supply chain, and was asking me, he said, I understand you've done this in the past, and what's the coursework that I need to make me more attractive to the employer? So I just sent him a listing of the courses that this fits within it. I think back to what Fiona and Dr. Powell were making the points is that if you're looking at these career paths, look at your curriculum, design your curriculum, and talk to the program directors, not maybe your program director, but other program directors who are in that field that you want to go into, and then start putting those skill sets. Because the first thing the employer is going to ask you to do is demonstrate, do you have those skills and expertise? And I think you have a great opportunity to start putting those together. And I've seen that happen over and over again. Other than that, I think that back to what Dr. Powell said, be comfortable in this environment, talk to people. I will say I've become acclimated that when students turn their camera on, that means there's a question. So on Wednesday night, as I was teaching, my grad students must be listening to Dr. Powell because they all turn their cameras on. I'm like, do you guys have questions? And they're like, no questions. we turn it on. Yeah.
I'm so excited to hear they're turning their cameras on.
They are. They are. I had a class of 62 that were turning their cameras on.
Yeah, that's great news. That just made my Monday. Fiona, what's your nugget?
Uh, I guess it's about networking. It's like start today, but you don't start by asking about jobs. You start asking about um, for your field, are there some courses that you wished you had taken? A great one for David. It's like you're changing direction. Talk to some people that are in the field. What would they recommend? Just start a conversation with people. When I was talking a little bit about how the world has changed for a lot of companies, ask alumni what's changed in the last year for the direction your company's going. What's changed for your role? Ask open questions like that and just start a conversation. So networking, we always say it's so important for finding a job, but the message is networking's not about asking about a job. Networking's about building the relationship. And that's what I'd just like to leave with you.
Boy, that's great advice, Fiona. You know, I think students don't realize that their most important goal, their objective is to get an internship or job. But the person that you're talking to, that's not their top priority. So so they want to mentor, they want to help you, they want to engage with you, they want to develop a relationship with you. So one of the worst mistakes you can make is to say, well, hello, dear alum, I'd like to get a job at your company. How can you help me do that? That is not the way to approach that networking conversation. It will fail every single time. The other thing that I just want to briefly talk about this morning because I do want to leave a little bit of time in case there are any questions that might come from people that are watching. I do want to talk about two other elements of career while we have Fiona captured and she can't run away. And one of those is the notion of a resume. I think that a student would much rather do a 45-page research paper than they would write their resume. Resumes, for some reason, just seem to be the most difficult one-page document that you ever do in your life. But if you learn the concepts behind doing a resume, and you keep it up to date, it will be the greatest investment of time that you make in your life. So Fiona, can you direct students, if they've got a resume that they didn't have to take the professional development class or an MBA student, where can they go to really get the insider's look? Because it is a hard job. I don't want to discount it. It is difficult. And it's not about just throwing on paper the tasks that you did. A resume is about illustrating your accomplishments in each of the roles that you've had. So Fiona, where can they go to find that kind of information?
So the CMC does do workshops on resumes. But if you're at a point where you feel like you've got something fairly good on there, but it's just not working, you can set up an appointment with one of our career development specialists. Monica, I would just say, you have to think about a resume as like a brochure. It's someone's going to read it and the highlights have to resonate with the person who's going to buy. And they're going to buy your services, you're the product, right? So if all of those accomplishments on there are about the past and they're not in any way made relevant to where you want to go, you can have the most wonderfully written resume, and I've seen those come out from resume writers. It's perfect if you wanted to stay in the same role again, but the majority of our students here want to change careers. So they're going to be leveraging transferable skills from before into a new area. Or they're going to be moving up in their organization and taking on more managerial responsibilities. So where you've been is not necessarily the best way to create that brochure about where you want to go. And so meet with our staff. Our staff are absolutely wonderful. They all come from industry. We've all had different roles there where we have been recruiters, HR, managers, directors, etc. And you know, we sort of understand what the employer is looking for. And you have to start looking at a resume from that point of view as well. It's like, what do they want? How do I present that? You know, I've sat down with some people with some really deep technical experience and basically sort of said, start again. You know, start with a clean sheet of paper. What is your goal? What are they looking for? And what are your examples that show that you can do this? And the resume looks like night and day after from when they started to when they finish.
Yeah,
That's
and
not
a great way to start that is to look at the position descriptions you want to acquire, then build your resume so it speaks to what is being asked for in that job and demonstrate that you meet the criteria that they're looking for. You said that beautifully. It's about being a marketing piece that's going to sell you into the job you want. I love that. Sorry, I'm stealing that phrase from you for forever. You know, Fiona, the other area, and it's a pet peeve of mine, and it's around students assuming that people that they're interviewing with have not yet read their resume. And I'm talking about the famous "tell me about yourself" question that students always get asked. I think 99% of an interview is going to be the recruiter saying, "Tell me about yourself." And then 99% of our students regurgitate their resume when the recruiter read the resume to decide that they were going to interview you. So folks, if there's one element that you spend any time in preparing for an interview, that is probably the most important thing. Because if you start regurgitating your resume, you know, if Fiona says, "Monica, tell me about yourself," and I say, "Well, thank you, Fiona, for interviewing me. As you can see from my resume, I have a PhD, I have a master's degree, and I have an undergraduate degree in communications marketing. I have 34 years of work experience at these companies." I'm telling Fiona everything I've already done, which she already knows. So what's Fiona doing right now? Fiona's thinking about, well, what am I going to cook for dinner tonight? Ooh, I need to make sure I take the dog to get his shots tomorrow. They are not listening to you.
Right.
So you need to answer that "tell me about yourself" question in a way that you are telling them about who you are and what makes you the ideal candidate for that job. So if Fiona were to ask me that question and say, "Tell me about yourself, Monica," I would say, "Fiona, I'm so glad that you had a chance to look at my resume. You have a clear picture of where I've come from, my academic credentials and my degrees. But what you can't see about my resume, Fiona, is that I come from a very international background. I spent most of my early years up until I was 18 living outside of the country in the Far East, in the Middle East, in Europe, all over the US. I am the most adaptable person that could handle any new situation and most diverse set of people at any time. You're looking for somebody who has to adjust quickly, I'm your gal." So you can see by that answer that I'm not regurgitating my resume. I'm telling them something that they couldn't have seen on my resume. So you all want to find that story that shares something about you that makes you that special candidate, whether you're a marathon runner or a mountain climber, or you speak 7 languages, or you know that you are a connoisseur chef and you've learned from being such a great chef that you really pay attention to the details and everything, and now you're in supply chain management and never thought that culinary skills was going to teach me how to be a great supply chain manager. You want to be that person that tells that great story that at the end of the day, when the interviewer has interviewed 20 people, you're the one that they remember, as opposed to the other 99 of them who regurgitated their resume. So sorry that I got on a little bit of a soapbox, but it's my pet peeve issue. Now, Fiona has been great to be here, and David is always here as we do our grad chats once a month, which, by the way, next month we're only going to do one, which will be at noon. So look for those grad chats. But Norma, I want to make sure that, you know, hopefully we've captivated our audience today, but I also don't want to be remiss in ignoring any questions that might be coming from attendees. Do we have any questions, or are they just been?
We do. We have a
Let's
few
answer
questions.
this.
So the first one is it's from an MS Finance student, but I think it could apply to all of our programs. Is it too late to get a summer 2021 internship?
It is not too late. I think Fiona said that really well in her commentary. No, it's not too late, but you do need to be out there. and I think Fiona will agree, you go to class every day, you do your assignments for class, you manage your academics, and every day you work on the internship. Every day you get on your various index or handshake, wherever the job postings are, you find something and you apply for it. It's not something you just do on the weekend. You know, it's like you're taking a class and finding an internship. So yeah, you can still find an internship. And also, don't be so picky to say, I'm only going to work at these 7 companies. Cast your net wide. Apply for all kinds of companies, small ones, startups, mid-size, big ones, conglomerates, globals. Apply to all of them. You know, when you fish with a net, you catch more fish. When you fish with a pole, you only get them one at a time. So get after it, and you're not too late. Sorry about the analogies. I just seem to be on a roll.
It's a very applicable analogy for sure. So the next question we have is a two-parter. I am a management science student concentrating in data analytics. In case I have to do a capstone project instead of an internship due to visa restrictions, since I am an international student, is OPRE 6367, the SCM capstone, my only option? Will MIS 6349, digital consulting project, be considered as a capstone project instead?
Wow, that is a really great question. Now, you need to talk to Scott Janke, Dr. Janke. He is the one that's going to tell you what are the acceptable replacement classes to the internship class, and it is required in the management science program at the completion of 18 credit hours. So you need to talk to them. The catalog changes every year. So if you came in under the fall 2020 catalog, then whatever it says you can do in that catalog is what is allowed. So you need to reach out to Dr. Janke, have that conversation about what course is going to be acceptable for you to complete the internship requirement. That's a great course. But just because you're an international student, don't think that you can't get an internship, because we have hundreds, literally hundreds of international students that get internships every year. And it's about commitment, and it's about wanting to get it. So if you work hard and you try hard, you can make that happen. So don't just assume, oh, I'm an international student. There are tons of companies that are still hiring virtual interns right now for summer 2021. So get after it.
So our next question we've actually received twice. It's a very common question that we get. This person is an MS-SCM student that came in the spring. The other person who asked the same question is also a supply chain management student. And they're wondering, can we go for the dual degree program, which I think we want to call double degree program? And how do they go about going for the MS and MBA after the first semester?
So this is a really good question. Okay, so in order to be admitted to the double degree, which is the MS MBA, you have to be admitted to the MBA side.
Right.
So you don't want to do that your first semester. You want to wait a little bit and then apply. I would encourage you to go and talk with somebody in the MBA program. Have them assess you with regards to your qualifications to get into the MBA program, because those are different than they are for the MS degree program. That's number one. Number two, I would ask the question, why? Now, there could be a lot of reasons why somebody might want to do a double degree, but this particular answer is not the right answer. So sometimes students will say, I want to do the double degree because I'll be here longer. It'll give me a longer period of time to obtain the job. So that is not a really good reason to do the double degree. The double degree makes a lot of sense if you have some work experience. If you have work experience under your belt, you're getting the MS degree, and you want to move into a managerial role by adding on the MBA, that's a really good reason to add the double. But if you're just adding it thinking it's going to get me more money, or it's going to give me a longer period of time to find that H-1B job, that may not be the best reason, and you might be disappointed, because then that MBA may not leverage you more in terms of a salary. You think that it would, but it may not if you don't have the right kind of work experience. David, Fiona, would you add anything to that?
I think personally on my side, Dr. Powell, you hit it right on the head. The MSM MBA is not going to enhance your career if you don't have that work experience behind you. And oftentimes the folks who are in the program that are doing both degrees, yeah, they're the professionals or the older students. The gentleman I was talking to earlier today, that's exactly what he's doing. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I was just even going to mention that, if this student's interested, one of the people who's just fantastic to work with the MBA program is Michelle Swenson, and she can help answer those questions. But Norma can get you in touch with all the right people for that. But yeah, Fiona, am I leaving anything out? You're welcome.
I think you guys have covered it. It's like, I think what you have to think about is what's my first role that I'm going to go into, and what's the skill set that I'm going to use. And for the MBA program, a part of that really is so based on your experience. You get so much more out of it if you've had some quality work experience, and you're going to be using that soon. So that would be my only part of advice, which is basically what you guys have been saying already.
Well, thank you. Well, terrific. Well, we are thrilled that you would take time to come and visit with us today. I want to thank David, who's with me every time we do one of these, but I also want to thank Fiona for letting us trap her to really address some really important questions. This is a really, this is a new day. And I've said it to David before because I love those blue bonnets and that wonderful sunrise behind him. But we're dawning a new day here in 2021. And we all have the opportunity to make this year what we want it to be. And for those of you that don't sit on your laurels, that get after it, that go for it, you can make the impossible happen. I truly believe that. And I'm not an irrational idealist. I think that the bird that gets fed is the one that gets the early worm. I'm not saying that exactly right. The early bird gets the worm. Is that right, David? Fiona,
the early bird gets the worm. Yes,
but
that's it.
For those of you that get up early, you get after your coursework, you get involved in student organizations, you meet employers every opportunity you can, you network with professional associations, which by the way is happening virtually. You make yourself smart about resumes. You prepare yourself for interviews. You get used to this doggone camera and blue light, and you learn how to feel comfortable in this environment, who study the job descriptions of the jobs you want and who prepare your resumes accordingly. You guys are going to win it. And you are the folks that we want to hear from that can tell students better than we can what it takes to make your dreams come true. So thank you for joining us today. We are really grateful. We look forward to you joining us next month. And in the meantime, thanks Fiona, thanks David, and thanks Norma. We'll see you soon.